I never thought walking into a bank with my daughter would end with me praying anyone, would notice I was in danger. The lights in the Fulton First National Bank's Peachtree branch were too bright, too cold. I could smell the faint tang of printer toner and some woman's citrus perfume. My fingers were trembling. That part one remember most clearly, the way they shook as I slipped the folded note across the mahogany desk, heart banging like a fist against locked doors. Please help. They won't let me refuse. Kira's grip on my elbow tightened like a clamp. Her nails dug into my coat through the wool. "Mama," she whispered, all teeth and syrup, "just sign so we can all move on." Her husband Dorian, in his slick navy blazer and smooth crocodile smile, perched beside her like a well-fed vulture. He gave a little nod toward the paper stack between us, 2 inches thick, printed in legalese. "Revocable Living Trust, Property Transfer," the cover page said. Everything they wanted was in that stack. My home, my savings, my rights. Gone in a stroke of a pen. Ms. Letitia Rowe, the branch manager, glanced at the note beneath the forms. She looked up at me, just once, and I'll never forget the flicker of alarm in her eyes. The kind that passed so fast, Kira didn't see it. But I did. Ms. Rowe's hand moved under her desk. I heard a quiet double click. Security call. Or maybe panic button. I kept my face neutral, my hands folded. I had played this role for months now. Sweet, slow Mama Gloria, harmless and agreeable. But fear is a sharpener. That day, it carved everything clear. Kira reached for the pen. "You'll feel so much better once it's done," she murmured. I stared at her hand. The same hand I'd held when she cried after the first IVF failed. The hand I'd squeezed after she got her job promotion. The hand that now trembled, not with love, but with urgency. They were in a hurry, too much of a hurry. Ms. Rowe cleared her throat. "Mrs. Martin," she said, steady and polite, "can I offer you some water before we continue?" I nodded. Water was a delay. And delay, now, was everything. Because I wasn't going to sign. And this, right here, October 3rd, 2024, at 11:14 a.m., was the moment it all changed. 5 minutes earlier, I had straightened my hat in the reflection of the frosted glass and taken a breath that reached deeper than I'd dared in months. The carpet under my low heels was a quiet gray-blue, clean and corporate. A watercolor painting of the Chattahoochee hung behind Ms. Rowe's desk, framed in cheap brass. Beside it, her degrees in neat rows, Clark Atlanta, Georgia State, a woman who'd worked to be where she was. I respected that. I was counting on her to recognize the same in me. My ID lay on the table, next to a deed with my name. Gloria Evelyn Martin, 66, East Point. My signature curled in its familiar, practiced loop on every page that had ever mattered. Until now. Now, it was a prize they were circling like wolves. Kira leaned close. "Don't make this difficult," she whispered, breath warm and sweet with peppermint gum. I turned and looked her full in the face. My daughter, my only child, once small enough to curl against me in a hospital bed after the bad fever, now dressed in soft camel wool and eyeliner, too precise to be anything but planned. Her eyes darted to the stack of papers, to the pen. Her jaw twitched. Behind her, Dorian scrolled his phone like we weren't even there. He wore smugness like cologne, thick and undeniable. He didn't look up when Kira added, with her voice barely above a hum, "It's already done, Mama. This is just the last step." I sat straighter in my chair. This was not the first time someone had tried to smooth a lie with honeyed tones. I'd grown up around that kind of talk. Back then, it was white folks in city offices with, "Miss Gloria, just sign right here now." And now it was my own blood. The documents weren't blank. They had headers that made my stomach knot. Deed transfer, trust consolidation, account access update. I knew what they meant. Kira and Dorian weren't asking for help. They were taking control. Polite theft and business casual. And yet, in this room of intentions, it was Pastor Gerald's voice that rose clear in my memory. Trust is a gift, not a weapon. I folded my hands over my purse and looked back at Ms. Rowe, steady and silent. If they wanted a signature, they'd have to take it from someone who just remembered exactly who she was. Before all this mess, my mornings had rhythm, steady, earned, and mine. I'd wake at 6, same as always. The light creeping soft and honey-colored through the blinds, casting long rectangles on the living room floor. My knees would ache the way they always did when the weather changed, but I didn't mind. I'd mutter a thank you to the Lord just for waking up, and then it was on to the kettle, the leash, and Rudy's eager paws dancing by the door. We'd walk the neighborhood in a circle, down to Low, past Mrs. Young's hydrangeas, up Beecher, across Cascade. Rudy sniffed the same fence posts like they held ancient secrets, and I greeted the same faces. Postman Terrence, Mr. Griggs watering his front stoop, the young mother in pajamas pushing her stroller with one hand, coffee in the other. These were the anchors of my day. Familiar, unremarkable, and entirely mine. The house was modest, a 2-bedroom brick with peeling shutters I'd been meaning to paint since spring. I'd paid off the mortgage in August 2016, and I still had the letter from Regions Bank tucked in my green filing box, right behind my marriage license and Rudy's vet receipts. Paid in full, $187,000. No liens, no late notices. That little piece of paper meant more to me than any diploma or vacation snapshot. It meant freedom, stability, a place where I made the rules. Inside, the walls told my story. Family photos in mismatched frames, hand-stitched samplers from when I still had patience for cross-stitch, the worn armchair where I read Psalms before bed. I'd planted tomatoes out back that summer, but the squirrels got most of them. Still, I didn't mind. The point was planting. Kira had started calling me stubborn about a year ago, said I shouldn't be living alone anymore. Assisted living would be safer, she'd chirped. No more mowing the lawn or worrying about locks. But what she meant was control. Consolidation. That word they used in the trust documents. I could feel it even then, like a tremor under the floorboards. Not quite a threat, but not love either. I didn't need bells and whistles to live well. Just my space, my keys, my little rituals that made up a life nobody else had the right to rewrite. Back then, I didn't see the storm coming. But the sky had started to darken. It started after the stroke scare in late 2022. Not a full stroke, the doctor said, but a warning, transient ischemic attack. Just enough to land me in Grady overnight with sticky tabs on my chest and a morphine drip in my arm. Kira rushed in that evening, a worried angel in her nurse's scrubs, clutching my hand like she was still 15 and scared of thunderstorms. I remember thinking how beautiful she looked, even under the fluorescent lights. "Just in case, Mama," she had murmured, squeezing my fingers. "Let's set things up right." "I'll help." It sounded harmless at the time. Loving, even. She had her laptop open before I'd even changed out of the hospital gown, scrolling through forms and checklists. Durable power of attorney. Joint access. Medical proxies. "Nothing scary," she said, her voice syrupy and sure. "Just making things easier if anything happens again." And maybe I wanted to believe her. Maybe that's why I didn't question much when I signed the cosigner form for the Regions account, ending in 1087 that following January. "Just in case," she repeated, and I nodded because the scare had left me shaken, unsteady in ways I wasn't ready to admit. She even took a photo of us after we left the branch, her holding the receipt, me holding my cane. "We'll never take advantage of you. Promise, 2 hearts." She'd texted later that night, attaching the picture. I'd shown it to Sister Clemens at church, laughing gently. "My baby's got my back," I said. She'd raised one eyebrow and said nothing. Looking back, I see now what I didn't then. That moment wasn't about trust. It was about leverage. And I'd handed it to her like a wrapped gift. We signed the paperwork in my living room. Dorian wasn't there. Just me, Kira, and Attorney Hodge, who reviewed the forms like a man reading through lunch orders. "Pro forma," he'd said, not even looking up. I brought out lemonade in jelly jars, and Kira toasted to "family doing things right." But now I can still hear the rustle of those pages as I signed them. That sound, soft, sharp, final. I thought I was protecting my future. I was feeding it to them one signature at a time. 2 nights before the bank meeting, I sat at my kitchen table with my green ledger book open and my reading glasses perched low. The same table where I'd once iced birthday cakes and stitched hems. Now it bore witness to something else entirely. A tally of my own quiet generosity, line by line. I flipped past recipes and grocery lists, past scribbled prayers and blood pressure readings. And there it was. Support for Kira and Dorian. I'd started the page 3 years earlier, mostly to track deposits and small gifts, never thinking I'd one day need it as evidence. I wrote slowly, adding and underlining. June 2021, $5,000 personal loan for their wedding. Never repaid. Sep 2022, $8,200 wired directly to Atlanta Reproductive Clinic for IVF Round 2. Dec 2022, $12,000 posted as bail for Dorian. No explanation ever offered. January 2023 to June 2024, $300 a month, temporary support, equals $5,400. That alone came to $30,600. $30,600 over 3 years. Money that came from my pension, my savings, the small emergency fund I kept tucked in a shoebox above the water heater. None of it felt small now. I ran my finger down the inked list and remembered how each request had come wrapped in urgency. "It's just this once," Kira had said about the bail money. "We'll pay you back next check," she'd insisted about the IVF. Always next time. Always just this once. Once, I'd asked her if she was keeping track of what I'd given. She laughed. "Mama, don't be tacky. You don't need to count. We're family." But it was precisely because we were family that I'd expected them to remember. Not just the money, but the effort, the stress. The way I'd stood in that bail office with my checkbook trembling, heart pounding like it did now in the bank. I hadn't told anyone the full total, not even Rudy. But Sister Clemens had seen 2 of the larger transfers. She signed as witness when I withdrew that $8,200 for the clinic. "Your hands are too generous, Gloria," she'd warned gently. "Don't let love make you forget value." Back then, I'd thought value meant money. Now I knew it also meant boundaries. And this ledger, tucked in my purse, was going with me to the bank, just in case someone needed reminding. It was a humid Tuesday when the letter arrived. One of those Georgia mornings where the air sticks to your skin before the sun even clears the rooftops. I was coming back from Rudy's walk, juggling a plastic bag, his leash, and the mail when I saw it. Sleek white envelope, no return address, addressed to Estate of Gloria Martin. My stomach turned. I stood on the porch with Rudy circling my ankles, flipping the envelope in my hand. Inside was a single-page letter on letterhead. Mason and Pike Real Estate Acquisitions. It read like a confirmation. "We are pleased to proceed with the pending sale agreement for the property at 614 DeLoe Drive." It even listed my full address, square footage, and estimated sale value. Sale? I blinked hard. There was no signature, just a phone number and an agent's name, Travis Jameson. Dorian pulled up 10 minutes later in that dented black SUV of his, windows down, music too loud. He grinned like nothing was wrong and handed me an iced coffee. "Got your usual?" he said. "You okay? You look pale." I held up the letter without a word. His eyes flicked over it too fast. "Ah, junk mail. Happens all the time, especially if your name's been on old listings or something." He waved it off with a quick chuckle and tapped the coffee cup in my hand. "Drink up before it melts." But something in his tone was too smooth, too ready. I knew that cadence. It was the same voice he used when Kira found those texts on his phone 2 years ago. The one that says, "Don't look too close, just let it slide." Later that afternoon, I called the number on the letter. A man answered, brisk and businesslike. "You're calling about the East Point closing?" he asked. "I'm Gloria Martin," I said evenly. "This letter says you're preparing to buy my home." Silence. Then, "Weren't you the one who signed the consent form?" "We were told everything's been approved." My hand gripped the phone tighter. "I never signed a thing," he apologized. Said he'd double check. I hung up before my voice cracked. Inside, I put the letter in the green folder with the rest of the documents. The folder that now lived in my purse. On the morning of September 30th, I woke to knocking. Not a gentle tap, but that insistent, purposeful kind that comes with an agenda. It was just past 7. The coffee hadn't brewed. My slippers were still by the door. Rudy barked once and went quiet. I opened the front door to find Kira and Dorian standing there, smiling like Jehovah's Witnesses. Kira held a tray from Café Belle, my favorite almond croissant, and a cappuccino I hadn't asked for. Dorian had a manila envelope under one arm. Thought we'd surprise you, Kira said brightly, stepping over the threshold before I even moved. We need to go over some paperwork, just routine. Won't take long. My robe barely covered my knees, but I stood there in it anyway, letting the air conditioning hit my calves while they made themselves at home. Dorian flipped on the dining room light and pulled out 2 chairs like he lived here. They laid out the papers as if it were already decided. Quitclaim deed. Trust amendment. A typed cover page that read, Finalization documents, living trust transfer. I scanned the titles without touching them. You said nothing about this, I said slowly, voice still sandpaper from sleep. It's just legal cleanup, Dorian said, not looking up from his phone. We've already talked about consolidating everything so it's easier to manage. Kira leaned in. Mama, it's no big deal. Just making it official. You'll still live here. It just protects the asset. But my iPad chimed then, from the hall table, an email notification. I walked over, opened the screen, and there it was. Subject, ESIGN, reminder, property transfer authorization. I hadn't initiated anything. Yet the system was nudging me like I was late. I turned back, slowly. Kira was too busy organizing the pages to notice the look on my face. I didn't say a word. Instead, I excused myself, took the tray to the kitchen, and dialed Sister Clemens from the landline. Gloria, she answered, groggy. Don't sign nothing till you read it slow, I whispered. And don't let them rush you. Her voice came strong after that. Good girl. You need me. I'll be there. When I returned, Kira was holding out a pen with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I smiled right back. Polite, hollow, and didn't sign a damn thing. It was October 1st, a Wednesday, and the heat had finally broken. The windows were cracked just enough to let in that soft, restless Georgia breeze. I was folding laundry in the hallway, towels and one of Rudy's worn fleece blankets, when Dorian's voice floated out from the guest room, low and careless. We close in 2 weeks. I've got the truck booked. Everything's lined up. I froze. The towels slipped from my hands. There was a pause. Then Kira's voice, sharp and hushed. Keep your voice down. She hears everything. I inched closer, my back pressed flat against the wall, one bare foot sinking into a warm patch of sunlight on the hardwood. They weren't whispering exactly, but they weren't careless either. This was the tone of people who thought the house already belonged to them. You're getting paranoid, Kira hissed. She's confused half the time. My hands balled into fists at my sides. Confused? I backed away before they could open the door and find me standing there. In my own hallway. Outside the guest room I paid the taxes on. Once I got to the kitchen, I pulled out my phone and opened the Zillow app. I typed in my address on a whim. More habit than hope. The screen loaded slowly. Rudy's tags jingled behind me as he pawed his bowl. There it was. 614 DeLoe Drive. My house. Pending. List price, $224,000. My throat closed. I clicked through the photos. They'd used old shots. Maybe from when Kira helped me repaint the kitchen last spring. But there it was. My hydrangea print curtains, my living room rug with the faded corner, my rose bushes blooming stubbornly near the porch steps. They had listed my house. Without my consent. Without my name. On a single outgoing message. Without even the decency of a conversation. I took a screenshot and texted it to Deacon Ellis with only 2 words. This fraud? He called back in under a minute. Gloria, baby. That's criminal. You need to talk to someone legal now. The next morning, I asked to delay the bank appointment. Just a phone call, polite and simple. Something's come up? I said. Can we push it to next week? Ms. Rowe agreed, without hesitation, her voice warm with concern. But Kira? She didn't take it kindly. She showed up not even an hour later, standing in my bedroom doorway, with arms crossed and eyes gleaming too bright. She had come straight from her car, still in her running gear, earbuds hanging around her neck like she jogged up Righteousness Hill. So now you don't trust your own child? The words were a dagger, thrown soft. I sat on the edge of the bed, folding the same sweater I'd folded twice already. My hands stayed steady. I just need more time, I said. Her jaw twitched. We already made arrangements, Mama. She turned her phone to show me an email. Escrow account confirmation, October 4th, closing. The message had come in at 9:06 a.m. the day before. My name was nowhere on it. "We've got a deposit down on a new place," she added. "The sellers are expecting it to close." Her tone shifted, a tremble sneaking in. "Don't embarrass us, please. This isn't the time to second-guess everything." I could feel the pressure working its way up my spine. The way she made it sound like I was ruining some grand family plan. She was good at that, wrapping guilt in silk. I picked up the folded sweater, placed it in the drawer. I said I need more time. She exhaled through her nose, slow, a controlled fire. "You always do this! Pull back when things matter." "What things?" I wanted to ask. "The house? My autonomy?" Instead, I watched her leave the room. Footsteps clipped, her silence sharper than shouting. Later that night, I drafted a text to Pastor Gerald. A full paragraph. I typed it, stared at it, and hovered over send. But I didn't press it. Because what would I say? That my daughter, the one I helped walk through fertility and foreclosure and foolish boyfriends, was turning my home into an asset she planned to cash out behind my back? Instead, I saved the message in notes. Just in case. That night, I slept with the bedroom door locked. By the time the sun dipped behind the pine trees that next evening, something in me had hardened. I sat at the old secretary desk in the back bedroom, the one no one used but me. Its brass hinges squeaked when I opened it, its drawers full of odds and ends, paper clips, funeral programs, utility receipts going back a decade. I laid out fresh printer paper, took a long sip of sweet tea, and began to type. "To whom it may concern, I revoke all prior permissions." That was the first sentence. I stared at it for a long time before moving on. Then I listed everything. Power of attorney, trust authorizations, account co-signatures, property transfers. Each line a strike through the false web they'd spun around me. Each sentence printed in 12-point Times New Roman, like a quiet courtroom verdict. I signed it with my full name, Gloria Evelyn Martin. I added the date and timestamp. Then I printed 3 copies and sealed one in a manila envelope. Kira had been texting all evening. First, casual. "You okay, Mama?" Then insistent. "You've been quiet. You sure we're good for tomorrow?" Finally, banging on the front door just after 9 p.m., Rudy growled low in his throat. I didn't answer. "Mama," she called, "we need to talk." I locked the bedroom door and turned off the light. My phone lit up again. Dorian this time. One new voicemail. Transcript: "If you're not going to be reasonable, we'll have to protect ourselves." Protect themselves? From what? Me keeping what's mine. I slid the envelope into my bottom drawer and laid my hand flat against the wood. My father built that desk for my mother in 1962. Oak. Heavy. No shortcuts. That's how they made things back then. In the silence that followed their retreat down the porch steps, I felt a new kind of clarity. They had taken advantage of love. Now I would use law. By morning, I would notarize the letter. By afternoon, I'd carry it to the bank. Not for discussion, not for approval, for record. By 8:45 a.m. on October 3rd, I was seated in the back row of the Fulton County Library's computer lab, my coat folded over the chair, Rudy's leash looped through my handbag on the floor. The place was quiet. Just the faint hum of the printer and the low murmur of a mother reading aloud to her son 2 rows over. I logged into my Regions bank account, hand steady, breath slow. I clicked into Settings, then Account Access. There it was, Kira Martin, co-signer since January 2023. I hovered over the Remove option for a moment, then I clicked. A pop-up asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I am." A second screen prompted me to change the account PIN. I did. Something only I would remember. No birthdays, no anniversaries. 4 numbers tied to no one but me. The system confirmed. Joint access removal successful. PIN updated. Overdraft protection canceled. I exhaled so deeply it felt like emptying a vault. As I packed up, I stopped at the help desk. A young woman in tortoiseshell glasses, Dana Walker, her name tag read, helped me print the confirmation email. She offered to staple the papers. I declined. "I need them loose," I said. "They'll be handed to someone official." She nodded like she understood more than I said aloud. From there, I walked 2 blocks to the Regions branch. Not the one where Kira scheduled the ambush, but the older one on Cascade I'd used for years. Familiar faces, slower pace. Teller Dana, a different Dana, taller, older, smiled when she saw me. Miss Gloria, she said. Been a minute. I slid the folded confirmation across the counter. I need a full printout of my account history. Last 12 months. Sure thing, she said. Everything all right? Just spring cleaning, I replied, though it was fall, and she knew it. As she printed the sheets, I watched the pages stack up. Deposit after deposit. Withdrawal after withdrawal. Transfers labeled Kira Martin and emergency expense and Cash App Dorian. Dana handed me the packet, her fingers warm against the cool paper. You good? She asked again, softer this time. I nodded. Getting there. Outside, the sky was bright and unforgiving. October had that clean sharpness to it, sunlight with no warmth. But I had my folder, and for the first time in years, my accounts were mine, fully. At 9:40 a.m., I walked through the sliding glass doors of the Office Depot in Midtown, folder clutched tight under my arm. The smell of toner and laminate hit me like a wall. Bright lights, high ceilings, rows of empty chairs lined up by the print counter. It felt like a waiting room for decisions you can't undo. I stepped to the counter. A young assistant with a wide smile and a chipped blue manicure greeted me. You scanning or printing? Both, I said, sliding the green folder across the counter. 16 documents, all in order. She raised an eyebrow. That's specific. I've been specific all my life, I said. Just forgot it for a while. Her name tag read Kendra. She took the folder carefully, as if she understood there was more weight in it than paper. Together, we scanned every page, itemized bank transfers, screenshots of texts from Kira asking for money, the unsigned quitclaim deed, my notarized revocation letter, the confirmation emails from Regions, and that realty letter addressed to the estate of Gloria Martin. Want it on a USB or email? She asked. USB, I said. No clouds, no passwords they can guess. She handed me a small black flash drive sealed in a zip bag. Label it anything. Gloria Martin. Protection, I said. She printed it in white block letters, slid the drive into its bag, and tucked the originals back into my folder. You've got it all, she said. I nodded. Almost. Kendra gestured toward the counter where the notary signs hung. We've got someone on duty if you need one. I pulled out the second copy of my revocation letter and slid it across. 10 minutes later, everything was stamped, sealed, backed up, and in my purse. My phone buzzed as I left the store. A text from Kira. Bring nothing but your ID to the meeting. It's just a formality. I didn't respond. In the parking lot, I sat in the car and ran my fingers over the flash drive like it was a rosary. They'd call it a betrayal. They'd say I'd gone behind their backs. But I hadn't. I was stepping out from behind theirs. And when they tried to twist my silence into compliance, I'd have something small, black and digital to speak louder than memory. By 10:15 a.m., I was sitting in the admin office of Shiloh AME, legs crossed, back straight, folder in my lap. The office smelled like lemon oil and aging hymnals, the kind of comfort you don't question. Pastor Gerald sat across from me, his face lined with quiet concern. He didn't speak at first, just waited. I pulled the sealed envelope from my bag and slid it across the desk. For attorney only, urgent. It read in black ink. He glanced at the writing, then looked up at me. What's going on, Sister Gloria? I steadied my breath. This is insurance. In case anything happens today. He didn't press, just nodded. You trust the attorney? Michelle Brightman. Your cousin. You vouched for her 3 years ago, after the water damage mess with the community center. His lips curved into a sad smile. I did. She's on standby, I added. If I don't call by 4 o'clock, she opens the envelope. Pastor Gerald's eyes didn't blink. Do you think it'll come to that? I don't know what they'll try, but I know what they're capable of. He reached for my hand, warm and firm. We'll cover you in prayer, but we'll also stand with you. One doesn't cancel the other. Just then, I saw movement through the window behind him. A black SUV circling the church parking lot. Too slow to be accidental. Dorian's. I stood. Pastor Gerald stood with me. I don't want them knowing I've been here, I said. He walked me to the side exit. You remember, Gloria, you're not alone. Outside, the air had sharpened. The light was harsher now, like the day had grown teeth. I walked along the sidewalk as if I hadn't noticed the SUV, as if I were just another sister heading home from Bible study, but I could feel his eyes on me. Dorian's curiosity had always been too strong for subtlety. He pulled up next to the curb and rolled down the window. "Where you been?" he asked. "Church," I said. He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "On a weekday? I don't wait for Sundays to get right." Then I kept walking. My allies were in place. Let them try to corner me. I'd already secured the exits. By 11:05 a.m., I was back where it began. Fulton First National Bank, Peachtree Branch. Same stiff chairs, same humming fluorescent lights. But this time, I didn't come to beg or hide. I came armored. Ms. Letitia Rowe met me in the lobby with a practiced smile and eyes that scanned quickly behind me. She knew. "Good morning, Mrs. Martin," she said, voice low. I nodded and followed her through the glass door into her office. The moment it clicked shut, I reached into my bag and placed a sealed envelope on her desk. "This is a formal refusal," I said. "Typed, signed, notarized. Please attach it to any pending transaction records related to my property or financial accounts." She opened it carefully, her face unreadable as she read each line. At the end, she looked up, her voice more cautious now. "This is very clear. That's the point," I said. I handed over a second envelope, a copy of the deed, revocation of power of attorney, and a letter of property claim. "I need all account access frozen pending legal review. No modifications, no disbursements." Ms. Rowe nodded, her hand moving slowly to the drawer beneath her keyboard. "I'll proceed cautiously," she said. "You're within your rights." Outside the glass, I spotted them. Kira and Dorian walking through the lobby with rehearsed smiles. Kira wore a blazer I hadn't seen before. Dorian, a folder tucked under his arm, checked his phone like a man expecting applause. They paused when they saw me already seated inside. Kira blinked, then smiled too wide, like a saleswoman 3 months behind on quota. "You started without us?" she said, letting herself in. I didn't stand. "I arrived early," I said. "Had business to clarify." Dorian pulled out a chair and dropped his folder on the desk. "We brought the updated trust documents. We simplified everything." "Thank you," Ms. Rowe said evenly. "We'll review those in a moment." I watched Kira's smile falter, just a hair. She hadn't expected Ms. Rowe to be neutral. She'd expected her to be cooperative. But today wasn't built on assumptions. It was built on paper. No raised voices, no tears, just receipts. And consequences in waiting. Because they'd walked into this lobby thinking I'd fold. They didn't realize I'd already filed. The silence in that glass office could have sliced a peach. Ms. Rowe carefully laid the new documents beside mine, hands flat, expression unreadable. Her computer screen reflected both sets, my revocation and their proposal, side by side like opposing testimonies. Kira's voice broke first. "Mama, you didn't tell us you'd already come." I met her eyes. "You didn't tell me you'd listed my house." Dorian's chair scraped sharply against the floor as he sat. "This is all a misunderstanding," he said, eyes darting to Ms. Rowe. "She's been under a lot of stress. There's been some confusion." I didn't blink. "There's no confusion. Just signatures I never gave and documents I never read." Kira lunged forward, reaching across the desk, shoving a pen into my hand. "Sign it now!" she hissed. "Stop making this harder than it needs to be." The moment her fingers touched my wrist, Dorian's hand gripped my arm. Tight, calculated. The exact pressure of a man used to forcing cooperation without leaving bruises. Ms. Rowe's voice came low, but firm. "Please let go of her arm, sir." Kira's voice cracked. "She's just scared. She does this. Gets worked up, forgets details. This is for her benefit." "Let go of my arm," I said, still calm. Dorian didn't. Ms. Rowe pressed the button beneath her desk. I heard the soft double click. The pen clattered to the floor. They both froze, eyes wide now, not in surprise, but calculation. A camera was mounted above us, its red light blinking steadily. We all knew it was on. "I'm going to need both parties to remain seated," Ms. Rowe said. Kira sat down like a marionette whose strings had been dropped. Dorian slowly released his grip, smoothed his blazer, and adjusted his tone. "There's no need to escalate." But escalation had already arrived, in the form of a silent alarm and a frozen bank system. I didn't say a word. I didn't raise my voice. I simply picked up the pen from the floor and set it far from reach, on Ms. Rowe's side of the desk. Then I folded my hands again, let them perform, let them lie. Because the camera had seen. And the clock was ticking. By 11:20 a.m., the sound of approaching heels echoed off the marble of the bank lobby. 2 uniformed guards entered through the double glass doors, calm but direct. Ms. Rowe stood to meet them, smoothing her skirt as if hosting a guest instead of diffusing a crisis. "We've had an incident," she said softly, eyes never leaving Kira and Dorian. "Client may be under duress, coercion suspected." I didn't move. Kira shot up like a spring. "She's confused. She's not well." You know how older people can be. "It's all a misunderstanding." Her voice, usually silken, now had a tremble too quick to hide. Dorian stayed seated, hands folded, playing the role of stoic support. But his knee bounced once, twice, under the table. "She gave us permission months ago," he said coolly. "I revoked that permission," I said, finally standing. The guards didn't touch anyone. They just stepped to the side, blocking the doorway like bookends. Ms. Rowe gestured toward her desk. "Mrs. Martin, you mentioned documentation." I reached into my handbag and pulled out the second envelope. The one with the notarized revocation, the Regent's access removal, the letter from the Realty Group, the account summary, and that flash drive labeled Gloria Martin Protection. I laid it all on the desk, quietly, deliberately. "They tried to sell my house without my consent," I said. "They changed my legal status in systems I never approved. They forged a narrative. I came to correct the record." Kira's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted to the camera above us, the red light blinking, steady and unblinking. One of the guards looked to Ms. Rowe. "Do you need police presence?" "I believe so," she said. "Bank policy requires escalation when financial exploitation is suspected," Dorian muttered. "This is insane. She's manipulating." "Enough," I said, voice flat as stone. "You've had your stage. Now it's mine." The room had shifted. Not loud, not violent, just changed. There were no theatrics in my reveal, no shouting, just facts. And facts were fireproof. The truth didn't need decoration. It needed daylight. And in that glass office, with the lobby watching and the camera recording, daylight had finally arrived. At 11:42 a.m., Officer Jamil Barrett stepped through the vestibule doors with a notepad already open. Young, clear-eyed, his uniform neat, and his badge catching the lobby's overhead lights. He introduced himself, listened to Ms. Rowe's summary, then turned to me with a calm nod. "Mrs. Martin," he said, "can you walk me through what happened today?" I passed him the flash drive first. That holds everything. Documents, account screenshots, real estate inquiries, notarized letters. It also has voicemail and text messages they sent pressuring me. He took it without hesitation and handed it off to his partner, a quiet woman with a laptop already booted. Dorian stood up fast. "She said we could." "We have texts. Months of them." Kira's voice cracked. "She was all over the place. One minute she wanted help, the next she's locking herself in rooms." "This isn't exploitation. It's a family issue." Barrett didn't blink. "And yet the property is listed for sale, correct?" Kira faltered. "Well, yes, but—" "An escrow initiated under names not matching the deed?" "She was going to transfer it," Dorian snapped. Officer Barrett held up a hand, calm but firm. "Please, take your seat." Ms. Rowe gestured toward the ceiling camera. Footage recorded from 11:06 to now. You'll see her hand being grabbed, her refusal to sign, and their physical escalation. The partner reviewed the footage in silence, nodding. "We have it." Barrett looked back at me. "Do you want to press formal charges?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at Kira, my only child, who once spent all night in a college dorm weeping over a breakup, who I drove 6 hours to pick up when she had that panic attack during her residency, who held my hand when the cardiologist first said, blockage. And then I looked at the receipts. The revoked deed, the unsigned trust, the Zillow screenshot, the betrayal typed in legal font. "Yes," I said. "I do." Barrett nodded. "We'll take statements. This is now a financial crimes case." Kira didn't speak. Dorian opened his mouth again, but the second officer stepped closer and said, "Sir, that's enough." The glass office had become a courtroom. By 5:36 p.m., I stood at my front door on Delow Drive, the porch bathed in golden light that spilled through the sweet gum branches like grace. The locksmith, A kind man named Vernon, with rough hands and a quiet manner, handed me 2 fresh-cut keys. "Deadbolt and knob are both changed," he said. "You're good now." I nodded and slid the heavier of the 2 keys onto the old brass ring that once held the original from 1986. That one I kept for memory. This one was for safety. Inside, the house felt different. Same furniture, same creaky floor near the hallway vent, but something had shifted in the air. Not fear, not even victory, just peace. I sat on the edge of my recliner, folder in my lap, and dialed attorney Michelle Brightman. She answered on the second ring. "It's done," I said. "Restraining orders are filed." They were both taken in for attempted financial exploitation. "Good," she replied. "I'll file the deed protection order first thing tomorrow. Your home is safe." Safe. The word sat in my chest like warm bread. Before sunset, I walked the perimeter of the yard. The garden beds were overrun, the tomato vines dried and crackling. Still, the roses had held on, pink, stubborn, in full bloom, despite the season's turn. I clipped 2 and placed them in a glass jar on the kitchen counter. The doorbell rang just after 6. I opened it to find my neighbor, Mrs. Holloway, with a bundle of lilies and a casserole in foil. "We heard what happened," she said, her voice soft. "If you need anything, me, Janice from Meals on Wheels, even Deacon Ellis, we're just next door." Behind her, a few more neighbors stood back, awkward but kind. One of the Johnson boys with a tray of sweet tea. The twins from up the block with a bag of cornbread muffins. "Thank you," I said, eyes prickling. They didn't ask questions. They just stayed. Later, I placed the new key on the kitchen hook, beside the one that used to open every door in this house, back when I believed trust was enough. Now I knew better. Trust is a gift, but locks are boundaries, and boundaries hold.